Common Sense Army, it's Friday, and we have a special edition of the Why I'm Right podcast. You guys don't want to miss this. We're talking about our favorite subject. Once again, I'm talking about COVID-19. You may be sitting there wondering, well, COVID was years ago. Why are we talking about it today? And the reason is simple. More information keeps coming out, more information from the NIH, more information from the WHO, more information about the inception, more information about the different cures that were out there, more information about the push for vaccines. So much is coming out, and I believe it sets the stage and showcases to you, showcases to me, and showcases to everyone out there what the elites in this country, what the mainstream media in this country is willing to do. The extent of their lies goes so deep. We need to talk about it, and that's what we're doing here today on the Why I'm Right podcast. So stay tuned. This is the Why I'm Right podcast.
We live in a world filled with noise and confusion, clickbait, and outright lies in the media. But here, we cut through the clutter to find the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. This is Why I'm Right, the podcast where we dig deeper, ask the tough questions, and unravel the tangled webs of political and current events. Join us as we dissect the latest news, analyze political rhetoric, and challenge the narratives that dominate the mainstream discourse. We're not shy. From dissecting the motives behind policy decisions to uncovering the hidden agendas of public figures, it's what we do. It's time to think for ourselves. This is Why I'm Right. And now your unafraid and unapologetic host, Matt Taylor.
He is right. This is the Why I'm Right podcast. If this is your first time here, welcome. We're happy you're here. If you're already a member of the Common Sense Army, welcome back. Today's an episode you guys don't want to miss. I know I've talked about this subject so much in the past, and I'm sure I'm going to talk about it so much in the future because we are finding out more and more every single day. We get drips and drabs coming out about COVID-19, the inception of COVID-19, the different things that were out during COVID-19, and we're starting to see the extent of the lies, the extent of the disdain from the media on us as people, the disdain from the elites in this country on us as people. This goes so far, and as I've said on previous podcasts, if there's no accountability for what went on in 2019, what went on in 2020, what went on previous, the planning that went into this COVID-19 pandemic, the lives that were lost, the businesses that were closed, the things that came as a result of COVID-19, so much went on in this country, so much went on in the world, frankly. But there needs to be accountability at some point, and until we're willing to hold people accountable for their actions from years ago, they're going to keep doing the same things today, lying to us today, manipulating us today, using propaganda on us today. And until we see it for what it is, and more people believe what you believe, what I believe, and what the facts show, that's the only way we prevent the next COVID-19. That's the only way we prevent the next lie from the media, is by holding them accountable. And I believe podcasting is one of the biggest things that's going on right now because more people are straying away from mainstream media because they now have a smartphone. They now can get news on social media. They now can get updates on social media. They now can, listen to places, people who they trust, instead of being told, this is the truth. This is what you have to believe. This is what you have to do. Because COVID-19, in my opinion, switched everything on its head, flipped everything on its head. Because there are a lot of people, and there are a lot of people that aren't there yet, but a lot of people started to see the extent of what the elites in this country, I hate using the word elite, but the people really in power in this country and in our world are willing to do to us, people. We think so much. Everyone out there, we think. You and I would hope, because we have heart. We have beliefs. We think our government, the people who are in power, the people that can make a difference in our world, we think and hope that they want the best for our people, the best for the world, the best for the populace. And after seeing what we're going to see today, talking about what we're going to talk about, I don't know if I believe that's true anymore. I don't know if the people in power in our country, the people in power around the world, people like George Soros, I don't think these kind of people really want the best for the populace of the world, the populace of this country. And then things start really making sense when we see open border policies, when we see things that just don't make sense to the average person. When we see it for what it is, maybe the reason they're doing things that make no sense to us is because they really want to harm us. And it's a sad place, it's a scary place to be, where you feel like, hey, maybe we don't have as much power as we think we do. Maybe we don't have as much freedoms as we think we do. And maybe the people who are in control really don't want the best for us. And that is a scary place to be. And that's what this podcast today is all about. Let's dive into it. Before we do, I always say this on every episode. Again, we're trying to grow the Common Sense Army one day at a time, one podcast at a time, because this kind of message that we're going to talk about today needs to get out to more and more people so that more and more people can start questioning the narratives, can start questioning their beliefs. I try to be very clear about my beliefs, and if you're here, again, you're going to get my beliefs. I'm happy you're here. I think I come at it from a common sense approach, trying to address some of the biggest issues in our country, in our world. But in reality, all I want, and the whole reason I started the Why I'm Right podcast, is to say I want more people to question for themselves, think for themselves, and the ability for all of us to speak freely, to converse freely. It's so critically important because once you see this kind of stuff that we're going to talk about today, the importance of free speech is so much greater. The importance of civil discourse is so much more important. The anti-censorship movement is so beyond important. I think it's the biggest issue of our time. I do. I think people in my generation and below me will deal with a different world than at any point in the United States history. And I say our world will be different because I believe the U.S. is so important to be the pinnacle of democracy, the pinnacle of free speech, and the pinnacle of what is possible when you have freedoms, when you have the ability to question things that don't make sense, to go out in the public and protest peacefully. But when we start to see censorship and shutting people down, closing people's businesses, doing different things that are dangerous to not only democracy, but dangerous to our sustainability as people. So that's why here at the Why I'm Right podcast, I ask you, if you care about our mission, you care about the podcast, and you care about the future of this country and our world, the one thing you can do to help me get the message out there is click the subscribe button right here below. Follow us here on Spotify. If you're seeing this on social media, follow us on social media. Do your part, because I'm going to do everything I can, but I need help from common sense people like yourself to grow this common sense army one day at a time, one podcast at a time. Share these videos with your friends, your family, people who agree and disagree, because I believe there are more people who have common sense in this country, even on the left, even people who have been misled in the past. We're starting to see things change in this country, and we need it to change drastically, dramatically, and very, very quickly. Or we're heading to down a road of communists. We're heading down a road of failure. And we're heading down a road where if we go any further, this could be the end of the greatest experiment on the face of the earth, which is the democracy of the United States of America, the democratic republic in the United States of America, the freedoms in the United States of America. If we continue down the path of COVID-19, we will end the greatest, most amazing, beautiful country the world has ever seen. And so let's dive into today's episode. Like I said, I'm sure you guys can tell I'm fired up about it because this is an issue that is near and dear to me. Because back in 2020, when I didn't get vaccinated, I'm clear, I never was vaccinated for COVID-19. I had COVID-19 multiple times. I was called crazy, a conspiracy theorist. I was called every name in the book. The reason I moved, I now live in the free state of Florida. One of the only places in the nation, again, where you have less taxes, you have more freedoms, and you have great weather. But in reality, one of the main reasons I left where I lived previously, which was in Boston, Massachusetts, I loved the city of Boston. It was a great spot. The people were great. But to be frank with you, the reason I left Boston is because I got a ticket. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. Again, I'm making it sound more simplistic than it really is. The reality is for almost a year, I had to be confined in a small space in an apartment in Boston. I lived in Fenway, right downtown in Boston. And I was confined to a hotel room because guess what? Restaurants were closed. Businesses were closed. You couldn't go out without a mask on. You couldn't go out without a vaccination card. You couldn't do so much. And the straw that broke the camel's back for me is I went out, I walked my dog. I have a German Shepherd. I walked my dog in the streets of Boston, Massachusetts, and I got a ticket from a cop because I didn't have my mask on, even though I was out in the freezing cold weather where no one was within 150 yards. Tom Brady couldn't throw a football that could come anywhere near me. That's how, there was no one within hundreds of yards of where I was, but I was walking in the streets of Boston, Massachusetts without my mask on, and I got a ticket. And I said, I can't do this anymore. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. And again, the cop that gave me the ticket, he was a normal, nice guy, someone that I respect. Again, I respected law and order. And this was right during and right after everything going on with the BLM, defund the police movement. Again, that city, Boston, if you know, super liberal city. I couldn't get out of there any quicker. But again, this issue of COVID-19 is near and dear to my heart because I was called every name in the book from people that followed me on my personal page on social media. I was trying to start a business. I did start a business. And ultimately, like I said, people commented, people said things to me because I wasn't vaccinated. I couldn't do certain things because I wasn't vaccinated. I couldn't go places because I wasn't vaccinated. And I saw everything going on. I eventually, I had family in New Jersey. I visited family in New Jersey, and you saw really the impacts of what COVID-19 was doing on our society. You saw business owners have to close their businesses. You saw families getting torn apart. You saw people couldn't even go see their grandparents, their parents, because they were scared. You had to have a time slot to go to the grocery store. It sounds so crazy, but when we start formulating what COVID was like, and then we can have the conversation we're going to have right now, you start to question so much about who we are as a nation. So if you didn't see it, the whole reason we're having this episode today is yesterday, Lawrence Tabak, the principal deputy director for the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, admitted under oath, finally, we all knew it, he finally admitted that the agency, NIH, funded gain-of-function research, not just gain-of-function research, but hold on, here's the caveat, gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Think about that for a second. We were told for years from Dr. Fauci and more that the NIH never funded any kind of gain-of-function research. Taxpayer dollars never went towards gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab in China. The Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan, China. We were told for years and years, under oath, that we never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We never did it But here we are today in 2024, 4 years later, when people think they're in the clear and there's no more time to lie because the facts are coming out slowly. Drips and drabs coming out slowly. They think they're in the clear to finally give us the truth that we all knew for so long, which is, yes, we did have and fund, using taxpayer dollars fund, gain-of-function research at a Wuhan lab of virology in Wuhan, China, the same place where COVID-19 was incepted. The same place where COVID-19 started. Again, I say it. If you said back then COVID-19 was from a lab in Wuhan, China, or you were Donald Trump and you called it the Kung Flu, the China virus, whatever you called it, you were told you were racist. You were told you need to stop Asian hate. Again, the BLM movement was so great, so big, But hold on a second. Once people started to catch on to maybe this whole China thing, don't we have a lab in Wuhan, China, the Institute of Virology? Didn't we fund that lab in Wuhan, China? Didn't this COVID-19 start in Wuhan, China at a lab? People started to say things like that. And again, what they do, they said, hold on, the hot thing to do right now is to get on the social train. Let's piggyback off of the BLM riots, the BLM movement, the defund the police movement. Let's piggyback on it. It's a cool thing to do right now. Let's hop on the social issue board and let's say stop Asian hate. Stop. Again, two things can be true at the same time. Two things can be fundamentally true at the same time. You could be a person who has Asian friends, a person who actually supports the Asian community, a person that loves people in this country no matter what their race, class, gender, sexual orientation. You could be that person and still have the facts in front of you saying COVID-19 is from Asia. Two things can be true at the same time. But not back then. Again, they hopped on the social bandwagon really quick back then. I'm going to play the clip here so you can hear it for yourself, not just take my word for it. But again, this is Lawrence Tabak, the principal deputy director for the NIH, admitting under oath that the agency funded gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Here's the clip. Listen up.
Tabak, did NIH fund gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology through EcoHealth?
It depends on your definition of gain-of-function research. If you're speaking about the generic term, yes, we did, but this is research. The generic term is research that goes on in many, many labs around the country. It is not regulated, and the reason it's not regulated is it poses no threat or harm to anybody.
You hear it there. Yes, it is. Yes, we did. We did do gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan, China. If you use the definition that we use here at the NIH, and we give you the real definition of what NIH version of gain-of-function research, if you're using our definition, yes, we did have gain-of-function research, and yes, we did use taxpayer dollars to fund that gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan, China, the same place where COVID-19 started. We have to be very clear here when we have these conversations, because guess what? I hope liberals out there, people who disagree with me completely, I hope they see this at some point in time. It may not be today. It may not be tomorrow. But at some point in time, I hope they see this right here, which is so clear. It's almost scary. I'm going to play you a clip now. Again, we're going to put these side by side. I have a few side by sides on this episode that we're going to play. I've played one of them in the past, but I want to put this one side by side with what you just heard, what you just listened to, what Lawrence Tabak just said to you. Yes, if you're using our definition of gain-of-function research, yes, the NIH, the National Institute of Health, did fund, using taxpayer dollars, gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan, China, the same place where COVID-19 started. His words. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but his words. Listen to this. This is our favorite guy on the right, the left's golden boy. And I say favorite guy, obviously, sarcastically. But here's Dr. Anthony Fauci. I don't even like saying his name, but here's Dr. Anthony Fauci, the guy that, again, on the left, was essentially Jesus Christ himself. His word was considered gold. He was on every television channel, every mainstream outlet, and he was pretty much the prophet sent from the Lord himself, because anything he said was true. When he said you got to wear a mask, people wore masks. I'll get into it after. Just listen to Fauci. Here he is.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function.
So
let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans,
right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. Okay, you get
NIH,
one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among mammals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
And let's let Dr. Fauci.
I have to, well, now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2. That's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well,
we don't
wait
know
a minute.
If it did come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports, that were published in the literature, it is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those viruses caused it.
It
no
is
one is alleging that
molecularly.
those viruses caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain-of-function research was going on in that lab, and NIH funded it.
That is
you can't
not.
Get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not obfuscating the truth.
Senator
You are the
Paul's
one.
time is expired, but I will allow the witness to.
Let me just finish. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible
No one's
to
saying
result
they are. No
in
one's saying those viruses
SARS-CoV-2.
caused the pandemic.
Senator Paul,
We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were
They're not.
animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And
Don't
you
admit the truth.
And you
Senator
implying.
Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come before this committee to respond.
And you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individual. I totally resent
could
that.
have been.
And if anybody
And it
is
could have been.
lying here, Senator, it is you.
I had to play that whole clip there because I wanted you to see it in real time. I showed you at the front of this episode that Lawrence Tabak, the principal deputy director for the NIH, finally has admitted we did fund gain-of-function research at the lab. Well, hold on a second. If that's true, what we all have been saying for so long, a lot of people on the right, and Rand Paul has been absolutely phenomenal from the beginning on this issue. You see him there pressing, actually saying, hey, I want to give you the chance because you already lied under oath once. I want to give you the chance here to correct the record so that we can maybe keep you out of jail. Because we know we did fund gain-of-function research at the lab in Wuhan, China, the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We know we did fund it. We have the records. We know it happened. And Fauci goes on and says, nope, That didn't happen. We didn't do gain-of-function research. Then Rand Paul then says, well, hold on. Here's your definition of gain-of-function research. He gives the NIH's definition of gain-of-function research, the same definition that if you remember in the first clip that I played earlier, Tabik says, yes, if you use our definition, yes, we did do gain-of-function research. Well, Fauci had a completely different answer under oath. One of them is lying. And I got a feeling I know who is lying. The one that for years said we didn't do gain-of-function research when clearly we did. And so if you really think about this for a second, because again, this episode's so critically important to where we're heading right now as a society, and COVID-19 just is a highlighter, just highlights it for us all. If you think about it, it is now confirmed that Dr. Fauci lied under oath to the American public. He lied so much more than the under oath that you just heard. But the under oath is important because it's illegal. But he then went on national television on a daily basis and lied to you over and over and over, saying, no, that we didn't fund this gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China. We didn't do it. We know that to be true now. It's been confirmed from the NIH now. And it's almost universally accepted across the entire world, but especially here in the United States. Finally, even CNN, MSNBC, and all the mainstream liberal networks right now are even hopping on board saying what? Saying, yes, COVID-19's inception is most likely from a lab in Wuhan, China, that our taxpayer dollars went towards and funded. Think about that for a second. Even the people that called you racist back in the day are now saying, yeah, it probably is true. We now know unequivocally that the U.S. government was paying, funding, giving stipends to hospitals and medical clinics around this country every time they had a COVID death. What does that do? It incentivized the hospital. It incentivized the medical clinics. It incentivized the people working in the hospitals, the nurses, the doctors, the people who, again, were propagated saying, oh, these are the greatest heroes in the world. We're going to call you heroes on national television, yet we still want you to lie to the public. Here's an incentive for you to lie to the public. The incentive is every time you say that you have a COVID death, we're not going to do any kind of confirmation whatsoever into that COVID death. But anytime you say someone died of COVID-19, we're going to give you money. Here's money. Every time you say someone died of COVID-19, here is some money. And again, think back to what life was like in 2020. You turned on the news, and what you see in the corner every single day, every single minute of the day, every moment of every single day on the news, there was a little ticker in the corner. If you remember, you lived through it, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and the number was just spiraling. Almost it looked like the U.S. debt just spiraling out of control. Every minute it said, this is the amount of people died of COVID-19. Here's the number of cases of COVID-19, and it just was going up and up and up. We're now finding out unequivocally that those deaths really weren't from COVID-19 because every time the hospitals, if they wanted to get funded, they wanted to get money, they were being incentivized. Every time they put down a COVID-19 death, they were getting paid. That's not me making up a conspiracy theory. That's not right-wing people making up a conspiracy theory. It's now confirmed. Someone came in, there's numerous cases, proven cases. Someone came in, a motorcycle accident or a car accident. They died on the table at the hospital. Numerous cases. Look them up yourself if you don't believe me. Motorcycle accident, car accident, boom, the death certificate, what does it say? You guessed it, COVID-19. Ticker went up one right there. You really think about how the extent and what the extent of these people's propaganda and what they're willing to lie to us about to force an action. The action was they wanted you, again, for monetary reasons. They were making money this whole time. All of these pharmaceutical companies were making money. They already had the vaccine in the works. And they wanted you to, again, the government's going to pay them every time they give you a vaccine. So what are they doing? Again, the tally goes up. More people are dying of COVID. They're scaring every American out there saying you're going to kill your grandma unless you get vaccinated. That's the only way you can protect your grandma from not becoming one of those numbers on the bottom of your screen. They scared people day in and day out, every single minute of every single day. So we now know unequivocally, again, government was incentivizing hospitals to make up and increase and exaggerate COVID deaths to scare you and I. We know that we funded a lab in Wuhan, China. The Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan, China was now funded, this is confirmed, funded, the Wuhan lab in China from our taxpayer dollars, funded this lab in Wuhan, China, where there was gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China. And that's where the virus started. Confirmed. All of that is now universally accepted, but if you said it back then, you were racist, conspiracy theorist, and you were wrong, and you were an idiot. You want to see how much further this even goes? I've played this clip before on different podcasts, but I want to play it here again because we now know again, confirmed, medical professionals were censored over and over on social media, over and over, all over the place. They were told they were wrong. They were taken off the air if they said anything about ivermectin or any kind of free or cheap or not owned by one of these major pharmaceutical companies like Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Moderna. If a medical professional went on social media and said, hey, I believe ivermectin, which has been around for years and years, we've used for years and years for parasitical or other issues, other viruses before for years and years and years, and this could work. This could be a solution to this COVID pandemic that we started, by the way. If those medical professionals went on and said that, what happened to them? They were censored, they were taken down, they were threatened to have their licenses revoked. And now it's universally accepted, essentially, right now, it's coming out as we speak. There's been all over the media, even CNN has flipped their tune completely, that ivermectin can be used today to treat COVID-19. Think about that. Again, Joe Rogan started this whole ivermectin train because he's somebody that likes different forms of medicine, different forms of, medical advice, not just listening to the blindly listening to the mainstream media saying, oh, you have to do this with your body. He says, well, I want to look into and research the medicine myself, talk to other medical professionals myself, talk to my doctor myself, and make the right decision for himself. So he was taken down, he was censored, he was threatened. They even pulled up old comments that he said to bring back a race war once again because he was using ivermectin and talking about how his doctor told him this could be used to help prevent COVID-19. And if you get COVID-19, ivermectin could actually help you heal quicker, fight off the virus quicker. And I say this because I had to play the clip side by side. Here's a clip side by side. It's one clip together. At the front of the clip, you're going to hear Chris Cuomo, who, again, for a long time, Chris Cuomo was the primetime anchor on CNN for years and years and years. And Chris Cuomo went on air night in, night out, telling you if you're taking ivermectin, you're a danger to society. You need to be shamed. Calling it horse tranquilizer or horse dewormer. And I want you to listen to this clip. At the front of the clip, he talks about how he's taking ivermectin today because his doctors have said it will help him fight off long COVID because he now has long COVID. So he's taking ivermectin today. That's the front of the clip. The second half of the clip is just B-roll and just him from back in 2020 when he was on CNN with Don Lemon, pretty much telling you you're an idiot for even considering taking a horse dewormer. Listen to this clip. This is CNN and Chris Cuomo now.
I am taking a, what do they call it? Like a regular dose, whatever. They're trying to build up of ivermectin. Ivermectin was a boogeyman early on in COVID.
You couldn't talk about it.
That was wrong. We were given bad information about ivermectin. Everyone's going to say Joe Rogan was right. No, Joe Rogan was saying, yeah, he was right. But that's not what matters. What matters is the entire clinical community knew that ivermectin couldn't hurt you. They knew it, Patrick. I know they knew it. How do I know? Because now I'm doing nothing but talking to these clinicians who at the time were overwhelmed by COVID and they weren't saying anything. It's cheap. It's not owned by anybody, and it's used as an antimicrobial, antiviral in all of these different ways and has been for a long time.
For malaria for over almost 20 years.
Yeah. We don't have to sit around worrying about offending the unvaccinated. That's how we made ourselves sick, not how we'll make ourselves better.
People who are injecting drugs for animals and horse.
And people telling them to.
Oh, my God.
What person, you talk about cancel culture and who to shame. Ivermectin, a dewormer, really?
They are shaming themselves. No one has to shame them. They're shaming themselves.
No, they need to be shamed. They need to be called out and shamed, brother. He gave birth to a new wave of demagogues who are misleading just like he did, making people so resistant to reason and reliant on lies that they would rather try poison than a real cure. The FDA just literally had to remind some Americans, you're not a horse. You are not a cow. Why? Because some are taking a drug that's given to livestock as an anti-parasitic to treat or prevent COVID. It doesn't work. At least 2 people have been hospitalized in Mississippi after taking ivermectin. It is a dewormer. It's not a COVID cure. Please don't take it. The state's health department put out a warning saying animal drugs are highly concentrated for large animals and can be highly toxic in humans. And they should have said, and I don't know why they didn't, and this drug is not for COVID. I wonder if politics played into even that. What do you say to those in right-wing media saying this deworming drug, this could do the trick?
Which drug, Chris?
Ivermectin, the deworming drug.
Right. So we've seen this before, and it's ironic, Chris, a drug that indeed is approved by the FDA for certain infections, but for which there's pretty good data to suggest it does not work against COVID-19 and would not be recommended by any medical professional.
Are we back? Oh, my goodness. What is going to be, bleach again? Light outside the body? Come on. Ivermectin? Ivermectin? You mean the deworming drug that's often used in livestock? The one with absolutely no evidence that it is effective against COVID. Pure misinformation. Why would you prefer to take drugs that doctors say won't help you instead of getting a vaccine that is safe, effective, and free? Why would you do it? Because of misinformation.
Again, this is so clear and so sad and so scary. The front of the episode, I talked about where I think we're heading. This is just a highlighter on our history right now. This is just what we're dealing with today. Because now they're being proven to be wrong, and it's happened over and over with other examples over and over. But this is just clear. It's the clearest form. And the easiest way for me to have this conversation is by showcasing to you what these people said back then, what Fauci said back then, what the NIH said back then, and then seeing what they're saying now. And showing you they lied under oath. They used propaganda over and over. They told you things that just weren't true. And now here is the perfect example of Chris Cuomo saying, hold on, I'm taking ivermectin today. I'm taking a normal dose of ivermectin today to protect myself from COVID-19 today, to protect myself and fight off long COVID today. But then he shamed every person that was even thinking about it, calling it a horse dewormer, calling it, you a demagogue, essentially calling you the threat to our lives, the threat of our time. If you were thinking about taking ivermectin back then, and numerous times on those clips that you just listened, either Don Lemon or Chris Cuomo said, there's no proof this works. This doesn't work against COVID-19. Please don't take ivermectin. Please don't do it. It's not going to work. Well, again, I just told you, it's now been proven. It does help fight off COVID-19. It does help your body fight off viruses. To the point at which Chris Cuomo, the same guy that said it doesn't work, don't take it, please. Please don't take it. He's now taking it today. And he's saying, well, he had bad information back then. Well, you propagated the bad information day in and day out, night in and night out. You told people they were the threat of our lifetimes if they were considering doing something for their health. That was the right decision, the right thing to do for their body. And what, they're supposed to listen to you, Chris Cuomo? But they're doing this now. The same thing. With all this election bullshit that's going on right now, and I hate cursing, I always say it, I don't like cursing on this podcast, but look at what they're doing. Telling you that Donald Trump is the threat to our democracy. The same people that told you Donald Trump colluded with Russia. Not true. The same people that told you Donald Trump committed this crime. Donald Trump did an insurrection. Donald Trump did this. Donald Trump's the boogeyman. Donald Trump's going to start World War III. Donald Trump's going to have the nuclear codes, and he's so scary to hold on to the nuclear codes. How can we possibly ever let somebody like Donald Trump hold the nuclear codes in his hands? He's going to cripple the economy. These are the same people. The same exact people. Literally, I'm not just saying these are the kind of people. No. These are actually the same exact people that said these things then. And they don't hold Biden accountable whatsoever. When, again, I talked about at the front of the episode, when are we going to get Fauci in bars? You know, they're so into this whole movement of no one's above the law. Well, let's play by your rules for a second. If no one's above the law, what about Fauci, who completely lied under oath to every single person in Congress, every single American citizen in this country, lied under oath saying, nope, we didn't use gain-of-function research at a lab in Wuhan, China called the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We didn't do it. Do I got to play the clip again? I can. Now we have the principal deputy director from the NIH saying, yes, we did use gain-of-function research. At the lab, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, we did use gain-of-function research, and we used taxpayer dollars to fund gain-of-function research at the same lab where COVID was started. This stuff is so scary because, again, if there's no accountability for Dr. Fauci, for Cuomo, for Don Lemon, for any of these clowns that just lie, that propagate. If there's no accountability for Rachel Maddow, who said, this happened, Adam Schiff, Donald Trump, I've seen the evidence. I've looked at the evidence myself. I've seen it in front of my face. Donald Trump colluded with Russia. Well, hold on. That didn't happen. We did 4 years of investigation. That didn't happen. These people need to be held accountable because when the conspiracy theories and the conspiracy theorists in this country are more right than the media, and I'm not saying right like right wing, like the podcast Why I'm Right. No. When the conspiracy theorists in this country is more accurate than our own media, and is proven to be more true, more accurate, more substantiated than our own media. That's a problem. That's a problem in this country. That's a scary place to be. But that's the place that we're in right now. The people who are labeled conspiracy theorists are more trustworthy than our own media. That's why we're here on this podcast. That's why I have this podcast. Is because conspiracy theorists, people always say it in my comments on social media, you're a conspiracy theorist. And I'll be honest with you, I actually take that as a compliment at this point. Because it would be almost insulting if they said, you're just like the mainstream media. Because I would be more wrong then. Conspiracy theorists are more accurate than the mainstream media in the United States of America today. People on social media are more right, more accurate than the mainstream media because they're not pushing a bullshit agenda from some godforsaken, unseen person, godforsaken people in power who are pushing an agenda to push forward their agenda, which I told you at the front of this episode is starting to look like and starting to show and starting to prove to be an agenda that's anti-human, an agenda that's anti-human capitalism, an agenda that's anti-business, an agenda that's anti-success. And that's the scary place that we're in today. That's why we're seeing them go after Donald Trump, weaponize the Department of Justice, go after Donald Trump in courtrooms across the country, charge him with crimes that could have been charged 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. Could have done it back then. They didn't. We're seeing it, and it's so crystal clear to anyone with half a brain. And again, if you're liberal, I want you to listen up. Because if you're liberal and you're just blindly listening to these people, I ask why. Why? They've been wrong over and over. Every major thing that's gone on in this country, and COVID was one of the biggest things that's gone on in this country in the last century. I'm telling you, 100 years from now, they're going to talk about COVID and how wrong Chris Cuomo was, and how wrong the media was, and how wrong CNN was. And they're going to talk about how COVID-19 changed media forever. Because now more people have podcasts. More people are getting their information not from CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, Fox News. No. Their ratings are dropping because people don't trust them. Congress has right now, our Congress, our House of Representatives, has the worst approval rating in the history of the country. The president sitting in the Oval Office today has the worst approval rating in the history of the country. Any president, including Richard Nixon. Think about that. This is the society that we're living in right now. Historic times. Our Department of Justice has been proven wrong over and over and over. We had people in our intelligence agencies, 51 intelligence agents, sign off that Hunter Biden laptop story was 100% not true and Russia misinformation. They signed off on it. 51 intelligence agents signed off. It was not accurate. It was not real. It was not true. It was from Russia. We now know the Hunter Biden laptop story is real. All of the information is real. The pictures are real. And all of a sudden, you got to start asking yourself, what is real and what isn't? And I'm starting to get to the point where if CNN puts it on news, if CNN puts it out there, I'm going to start looking the other direction and start researching myself. I'm going to be the Joe Rogan, right? I'm going to be the Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to be the people that are actually conspiracy theorists or people that are, labeled by the media as crazy. But we're in a point where you have to be the Joe Rogan when I say that. I'm not saying you got to be a podcaster and interview people. I'm not saying you got to be a football quarterback. I'm not even saying you got to be public or say anything publicly. But we're at a point right now where you have to do the research for yourself. You got to look into this stuff for yourself. Don't take the word of some news outlet just because they have a 3-letter name and they're on television and making billions and billions of dollars funded by the same people that funded the pharmaceutical companies that started the COVID agenda. And if you start putting the pieces together, and you start seeing where the money is going, where the money is coming from, it all starts to make sense. And so this was a little bit of a different episode than typical on this podcast. Normally we talk more about the breaking news and we talk about, what's going on with the election, what's going on in the country. But this episode, I'm telling you, is critically important. And I hope a lot of people listen to this. And I'm hoping that you share this message, share this podcast out there. I want so many people to listen to this episode. If they don't listen to any other episode I've ever released, I don't even give a crap. This episode is more important than any episode I've ever released, and any episode I probably will ever release. Because I need you to start joining the Common Sense Army. I'm not saying listen to me. Obviously, I would like that. But join the Common Sense Army and be your best advocate. Don't just blindly accept some bullshit. Don't just blindly follow. Don't just blindly take a vaccine. Don't just blindly accept that Donald Trump colluded with Russia. Don't just blindly accept any of the stuff they're telling you right now. Do the research yourself and make your own conclusions. Come to your own conclusions. Because I can tell you something. If you research something yourself and you look at all the things and you take into common sense approach and start thinking a little bit from the nuggets that you're getting from all these different places that you're researching, I can guarantee you, you are closer to the truth than the truth that you're going to see on the mainstream media. I can promise you that. Take the nuggets, research it yourself, and think. And if you do those three things, you're closer to the truth than the propaganda you're going to see on mainstream media. I don't care what the outlet is. Fox News lies, CNN lies, MSNBC lies, ABC lies, all of them. They're all a part of the problem. You're part of the solution. Use what you got. Use the brain you got. And let's start growing people that have common sense, because when we do, again, it's hard to control people who are emphasized, energized, and people that use their brain. That's exactly what the mainstream media and the elites and the people in power don't want. And I want to do it so bad. I want more people to use their own brain. Use what you got, because you're just as smart as any of them. That's the truth. These people that are sitting on mainstream media, they think they're so hotshot. Talk down to you. Tell you need to be shamed. Don't take it. Please don't take ivermectin. Cut 3 years later. I'm taking a dose of ivermectin daily. Really? Really? These are the people we're dealing with. So as we move forward on the Why I'm Right podcast, we're going to come at it from this speculative, approach. We're going to come at it from the common sense narrative. And if you want to listen to more episodes, or you want to talk to me, or you want me to break down some subject or look into it or research with you on a subject and do an episode on a subject, you want to come on the Why I'm Right podcast, well, guess what? I respond to every email. All you have to do is email me at matt@whyimrightpodcast.com or visit our website, www.whyimrightpodcast.com. If you scroll to the bottom, you see a little biography, you see my family, you see everything. You scroll to the bottom of the page, there's a little thing you could ask questions. You write a question in there, I'll get back to you. Make sure you put your email in there, I'll get back to you. And like I said, we're growing the Common Sense Army one day at a time, but it starts with you. I need your help to do it. So as we move forward on the Why I'm Right podcast, I hope you all have a great weekend and stay alert. Think for yourself, guys. This has been the Why I'm Right podcast, and I just told you why I'm right.
You've been listening to Why I'm Right. Thanks for being a part of the Common Sense Army. Our passion is to cut through the noise and confusion and to bring light to clickbait and outright lies in the media. Unafraid, unapologetic, real and raw. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram at Why I'm Right, on X at Why I'm Right Pod. And for more, hit the website at www.whyimrightpodcast.com. See you next time.